Good evening, everyone. Joshua Craven here, along with Evan Jones. So great to see so many future lawyers here tonight. We're giving a quick webinar about mastering the logical reasoning section of the LSAT. As I just mentioned, my name is Joshua Craven. I initially got a 152 on the LSAT when I first initial diagnostic score was a 152, and I was pretty disappointed. But through about 3 months of I was able to raise that score 77, which truly changed my life. It got me a nice scholarship, the biggest scholarship that they offered at the University of Chicago, which is a top 5 law school. It was the school that I wanted to go to since I was a little kid, school of my dreams. And there at the University of Chicago, I met my partner here, Evan Jones. We started
Hey guys.
Lawschooli.com together. Evan, introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi. Coincidentally, Josh and I took the LSAT at the same time, and we actually, had a fairly similar experience. For me, I was in the 150s, absolutely no clue how to approach all this. And this was back at a time where there really wasn't too much in the way of good out there. Yet with really concerted self-study, despite having a full-time job, was able to get my score up into the 170 range and finally a one. Really pinning of both my score and Josh's was a great performance in logical reasoning. Right? Josh got none wrong whatsoever. I'm kind of envious of that, but I got just one wrong in each section, and that's such a great anchor because LR, of course, makes half of your score. Right. So, at that time, I felt that I was really good at LR when I took the test. But now I really feel that I have even a better understanding after years of teaching it. And really, our aim here today is to about how you get to that point, how you truly master the LR section, resources to do that on your own. You know, where you really want to be truly confident on the LR section, having the same exact understanding of this test and of these test questions as the people who make the test, right? And I've been confident that there's no real resource out there that brings you to that point, but we're aiming to try and give you that understanding. So with that in mind, let's talk today about kind of what separates the LR masters from the mushy middle. Josh, do you want to talk about the mushy middle and like?
Yeah, so really, most people never quite gain that LR mastery. They never quite get there. They generally, on average, people miss about 50% of the questions on the LR test. And since the LR counts for 50% of your entire grade, that's a lot of questions to miss. That's a lot of up and still get a really high score on this test. So it's really important, since the LR section accounts for such a significant portion of your overall score. It's really important to lock this section down and master it. The mushy middle is kind of not where you want to really gain a thorough understanding of this section of the test, since it is so important. And you can really master the section and come out with the score that you want on test day. So Evan, how do you effectively study for the LR section?
Yeah, so again, the points we're trying to cover here are points that are going to help you get into the upper echelon where you're confidently knowing, okay, I can score, anywhere from just missing 0 to 3 points on this section, right? Really, like the end goal, when you hit that kind of level of consistency, you're just so confident in your ability to do well that taking the test itself will be a breeze, even if you're, slightly deficient in either logic games or RC, which, those sections sometimes give people more difficulty. But I'm really confident that if you do the things that we talk, you can hit scores in LR that you just didn't ever think possible. So let's focus in on those study habits. And I think, the first thing that I think is so key is that people who reach LR mastery are patient and don't try to do everything at once, right? They break tasks to be learned out into manageable chunks and work on mastering those chunks one at a time. And, that's fairly easy to do these days. And I think there's a lot of great resources out there that do that for you. But, you know, it's so key not to try and take on everything at once. And back when Josh and I studied, I think it was easy to just try and dive in and, you know, be like, okay, if I want to get better at LR, I have to just do LR sections. That doesn't work. We need to chunk things out into manageable pieces that you can achieve mastery and continue building on that foundation.
No, absolutely. When I first started studying, jumped right into the LSAT, and I was just taking prep tests. I was like, okay, this is the LSAT. Why don't I open this up and just start looking through it and trying to figure it out? And then, there's logical reasoning, reading comprehension, logic games. There's these 3 different sections, and I was trying to learn them all at once, trying to juggle all those. I wasn't breaking things down into their component parts. I didn't even break out logical reasoning and logic games. I was just kind of trying to learn it all together all at once, and I wasn't getting anywhere. I was spinning my wheels, and it wasn't until I really said, okay, you know what? I'm going to step back for a minute. I'm going to start with logical reasoning. I'm going to really focus on logical reasoning, and beyond that, I'm also going to focus in on specific parts of logical reasoning. I'm going to break these questions out by question type and really start learning, okay, what when they ask this of me, what do I need to do? And then when they ask a different type of question, what do I need to do? How do I approach that question type? And by really taking things down, breaking it down into its component parts, all of a sudden it started feeling much more manageable. And like, okay, I could learn how to do this question type. Instead of just trying to do everything, really breaking it down into these small component parts makes it feel a lot more manageable. And it actually does make it easier to master each component part in isolation before trying to put it all together on a full LR section or a full prep test.
Yeah, and that brings us to our next point that, people who get good at this test don't move on from anything that's in front of them without feeling that they've mastered it to a satisfactory degree, right? So, take that attitude with you. Something we see that people who stay in the mushy middle, they work on something for a little bit, but then they're like, oh, the test is in 3 months. I must have to move on to the next thing, right? Even though they haven't felt that they've really achieved a true understanding. That's the wrong attitude. We probably try to challenge our students a lot more than other groups do, but the reality is you have to master things before you move on. And if you don't have that will to master, which we'll talk about a little bit more, it's going to hurt you. So,
so Evan, why does it hurt you specifically? Why does it hurt you to kind of just move quickly through this stuff? Do you develop bad habits? Do the concepts build upon each other?
Yeah, I think the most fundamental thing is that the concepts build upon each other. So an incomplete understanding in one area is going to eventually hurt you when you have a concept that relies on that. Talking about the fundamentals of argument structure, premises and conclusions, for example, the first thing we teach you is how to identify a conclusion and how to see the relationship of support between that conclusion and the premises that are propping it up, right? And frankly, a lot of people never even get to the point where they have truly mastered that basic skill. And if you don't have, that foundation, then moving on to the next task of understanding, when premises provide adequate support and when they don't, that's just going to be impossible if you can't even identify conclusions. So skills build on each other, right? And that's what makes it so important to break things into manageable chunks and really master them, right? So, how do you go about achieving that mastery? When you don't understand something on your own, you have to not be too proud to admit it, and you have to look to a good resource to help you settle the matter, right? Josh, what did you do when you couldn't figure something out on LR?
generally my process, if I couldn't figure something out on LR, I would hop back into the books that I had, or the course that I was working on. I would reread the material, and then I would really think about, how does that apply to this question? Where did I go wrong in my thinking? Where did I sort of deviate from the prescribed approach? And I would really sit down and spend a lot of time with that question until I fully understood it. And if that meant I had to go back into the materials, I would. If that meant I had to sit there with one LR question and spend 15, 20 minutes just really digging in and trying to parse apart the logic and figure it out, I would take that time. You just have to be self-aware of, I think one of the biggest traps in preventing people from learning this stuff is they hop back to the answer key. They see, oh, it was B. Oh, I chose C. Oh, now I see. Now I understand.
Yeah.
And then they just move on. You have to be really self-aware and really say, okay, I didn't understand this. It wasn't obvious to me when I was, selecting the answer. Why was I making the incorrect answer choice selection? And, what about the correct answer choice was I unable to see at the time? You really have to be very honest with yourself and evaluating and judging your abilities as you're going through these problems.
Yeah, so it kind of almost seems like being self-critical, but like people who are not competent in something have a tendency to overestimate their ability, whereas those who get really good are actually often very self-critical and doubting their own skills. So for me, I was often hammering on myself. Why am I not getting this? And if it meant coming back to it 3 times during a day to understand a question and be able to truly see the logic behind that question, I was willing to do that. So try to capture that attitude of kind of humility and willingness to admit that you need to go to some resource. And, Josh and I, of course, will be happy either through the LR course that we're talking about today, or through our mastermind study group to be that resource to guide you, of course. So, talking about our next point, when, this is something, we try to ask a lot out of our students. And the reality is, if you want to get good, you have to be very consistent in your study and follow a set plan. I think Josh and I both were lucky in that we had the experience of sort of making for ourselves a decent schedule. At that time, there wasn't a lot of information out there about how to do that. But now we have a much clearer idea, having seen hundreds and hundreds of students go through this process, what sort of study makes for people that eventually achieve mastery, right? If you join us, or even if you end up joining, some other course, make sure you're consistent in your study, follow a set plan, right? And you're going to need to be seeing a lot of resources and a lot of prep questions before you can expect to be great. We'll talk about that a little bit more later, but greatness really doesn't happen overnight. I want to emphasize that the LR section is not easy for anybody. Josh, like when I got to U Chicago, I didn't meet one single person, and people talked about the LSAT a lot when they first got to law school. I didn't meet one single person who just said, oh, I studied for a couple weeks and got, 170.
No, and I met some of the smartest people that I've ever met at the University of Chicago. I've never been around a group of smarter people, and all of them struggled at this test to begin with. It's not like you just get this group of geniuses that comes in, takes the LSAT, gets a perfect score just because they're geniuses. These are all people who worked really hard to improve their score. And I was in the same boat, right? I didn't come from an Ivy League school, and I didn't have a perfect LSAT score when I first started studying. It took consistent practice. And I think that's one of the things that people often forget. Like they assume, oh, Evan and I probably went to Harvard undergrad, and all of a sudden,
just been like clearly like genius branded on our forehead. This test is designed so that even if you are, a friggin' genius, I think that the test is designed so it's just not natural stuff, right? So even like those of us who are maybe most, even people out there in the world who are the most gifted, still have to put a concerted amount of effort into understanding how this test works before they can get good at the questions, So, we've really tried to give, our course and all the material that we make has sort of been geared for giving people the best possible understanding, because we know that if you don't get to that level of understanding, you're always going to be stuck in the mushy middle, so we want to get you to true understanding of the problems. And moving on to our next point, I think that really, if you want to come work with us, you have to supply that will to master. Wouldn't say we don't enjoy it, but we most enjoy working with the students who we see have a real drive and a real passion to understand this test in and out, because the LSAT isn't just a test, right? It's teaching you logic. To truly understand this test, you need to understand, patterns of reasoning and logic that will apply to a lot of your life, right? Essentially, you need to, put yourself through an undergrad Logic 101 class to be able to truly understand these problems. And, that's what we really want to help you do.
But yeah, and incidentally, if you're still an undergrad and you can take a Logic 101 course, I do recommend that. Although a lot of people say, oh, it's not necessary, you don't necessarily need it. If you're still an undergrad and you've got some electives to knock off, take a Logic 101 course. Yeah, you'll be thankful that you did.
I think that was like
so
for me.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think having that background really made this stuff click a lot faster.
Yeah, because Josh and I were studying again back in, 2008, before there was really kind of good resources. I'm confident that I can teach you everything that you need to know to be just as good as someone who has taken logic at a very good school. But, back then, I don't think there was any resources that could get you there, right? So, so we're going to talk a little bit now about, seeking understanding, not merely correct answers. And it's a fine distinction to draw. But again, like people who stay in the mushy middle, they just look at the correct answers, or maybe they want one way to get to the problem, some sort of shortcut, and don't want to truly think about what is creating the fact that this answer is right and that these other answers are wrong, right? Whereas, we really want you to have the facility to explain why each wrong answer is wrong and why the correct answer is wrong. Okay. And that really, again, means, and I'm going to harp on this, getting to the same understanding of the test as the makers of the questions have, right? And, this means not shying away from hard concepts. It's possible to do okay on the test without a good grasp of deductive logic, such as conditionals and quantifier statements like some, most, etc. But we find that people who never reach the upper echelons of this test have trouble getting a firm grasp on this stuff. But it is possible. If you put in the effort, you guys all graduated college, you can get a firm grasp on complicated concepts within logic. And once you reach that level of understanding, you're going to get a better score. Josh, could what do you see with students who never really get a good grasp of, things like chaining conditional statements together and making like inferences from conditional statements? It just seems like they never really get to the highest level, even if they're quite good at other questions.
I think what some people do is they'll use their whatever resource that they have, and they'll learn about the different question types, and they'll kind of try to go through this mechanical process of okay, here's the question type, here's how I've been told to approach it. Let me try to kind of go through the motions there. I think the students that do the best on this test aren't necessarily the ones who are thinking so much about the question type, although that's always in the back of their mind. They're really reading everything and breaking down the logic. They're breaking down the arguments. Is this an argument, or is this just a set of facts? If there is an argument, do the premises support the conclusion? How does the argument flow? Is there a flaw in the argument? Like all these things, every time they read the stimulus of a LR question, they're always their mind's just churning through all these questions. Because they have this foundational understanding of the underlying logic underpinning all of these, most of these LR questions, and they have a real strong understanding of argument structure and how things fit together and what makes a a sound argument, what makes an argument flawed, and they're kind of going through all of these different pieces in their mind as they are reading before they even get to the question stem.
Yeah,
before they even know.
Yeah, let me cut in there because I feel so strongly on this point. A student that I see that has LR mastery, that's able to get a good score, they can just read the stimulus, right? And then they can tell me all sorts of things about the various features of that stimulus. We might as well call logical reasoning the argument section, because most of it is arguments. Even if it's not an argument, it's just a set of facts. You're usually having to make an inference from that, and thus building an argument, right? So, students that master the LSAT, they can just tell me so much about the features of that argument, and they can talk about it like if they've really grown up under me and have learned what I have to say. They can talk about it, and I think the same way that a professor of logic at a college could talk about it, right? So that's the sort of mastery that we're really hoping to achieve, right?
So Evan, how long? We've got a few questions here, and it kind of goes along with the next slide here. We've got somebody asks, would 2 months be enough time to improve the LR section? Another person asks, realistically, how much time do you think it takes to master? Another person asks, how long did it take you guys to go between your first score of 150 and your initial score, and your ultimate score on test day? So 3 related questions, all sort of having to do with time. How long does this take to master?
Yeah. So, for example, say, like I said, it's almost about the same amount of work as taking an undergrad logic course. So if you think about how long that would take, that would be just like one of your classes meeting, 2 or 3 times a week with frankly, a shit ton of homework. If it was anything like my logic course, some people it's going to take longer. Again, we want you to master every concept before you move on. But the course is designed to get you through that in a little bit more than a month if you're really putting a lot of work into it each day, right? Some people may have different schedules. We work with tons of people who have full-time jobs with overtime responsibility. I wouldn't be surprised if in those sorts of situations, it takes you closer to 2, even a little longer months to, really feel like you've achieved some mastery over this. But, for the person who said, I just have 2 months, if you're willing to really focus in on this stuff, yeah, you can do it. You can completely turn around your understanding of logical reasoning within 2 months. I absolutely promise we can make you much, much, much better.
Yeah, for me, it took 3 months to get from a 152 to a 177. 3 months. And I would say that was pretty evenly split between a month of a really, really going hard at LR, a month of really, really going hard at logic games, and then a month of sort of time, kind of working on RC while also getting my timing down and going through a lot of full-time prep tests to kind of lead right up to test day. I never completely mastered RC. I did miss 4 questions. I'm not too proud to admit on reading comprehension. And those 4 questions are the only 4 that I missed on the test, which I still beat myself up because I didn't study for RC as hard as I should have. It's the hardest one to really
we can help you avoid that mistake too. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. So Evan, I think we've got about 3 months, I think, is a really good, and which incidentally, we're about 3 months out from the June LSAT. So I think if you're studying for the June LSAT, and even if you haven't started yet, I think now's a perfect time. But you got to get going. You got to get churning on this stuff because it does take some time for these concepts to really
sink in.
But I would say it takes about a month to really get comfortable with each with logic reasoning, probably another month to get really comfortable with logic games, and then at least another month to kind of put it all together with reading comprehension
and with LR, unfortunately, if you really want to kind of reach the highest levels, I think you sort of have to focus on the stuff that is often the hardest first. These are, we draw the distinction between deductive logic and inductive logic, right? Deductive logic is being able to look at a set of premises and see what you can infer from them, or conversely, to look at an argument and understand whether the conclusion is something that is absolutely proved true if you assume that the premises are true, right? So understanding deductive logic is perhaps the most difficult task, but it's also the most foundational. We already mentioned this, but I think people who can analyze deductive arguments and determine whether the conclusion is supported by the premises, people who can get that understanding, they can do anything else very easily. It's a breeze. So we really start you out with that. If it was me and I had the test in three months, I would really want to focus in on that as my first thing to do, is like try to get a good understanding of arguments. If you can do that, you can do anything else, right? So yeah, and then what?
One of the questions we have that just came in is, should a student be focusing just on LR first, or should they be mixing LR, LG, and RC together? Or what's your advice with that?
Sorry, Steph, if you just heard a voice from yonder, this is Steph, our absolutely critical employee. And
she's our student. I'm sorry, Steph, what was your title? I want to get this right.
I'm the Director of Student Services.
Director of Student Services, that's right.
Yeah. So thank you, Steph. Yeah. There's a couple ways to do it. I think it would be okay, like especially for people who are on a slightly longer schedule, like 4 or 5 months, to focus on just one area first. What we generally have people do is focus fairly simultaneously on logical reasoning and logic games, and sort of put off RC for a couple months, because it's just more important for your score to be able to make quick, spend a long time with LR and LG.
Yeah, let me just say, I don't think there is a wrong way or a right way. Like, I think if you mix them up, it's not necessarily you're going to do terrible in this exam. But I will say this: when it wasn't until I really took each section, like I said at the beginning, and broke things down section by section, and really focused in on each section one at a time, and really spent a lot of time with logical reasoning, and then spent a lot of time with logic games, and took a few weeks at least at a time to just focus on, step piece by piece, mastering each of the various question types of logical reasoning. It wasn't until I really took the time to step back and break it down that I really started seeing gains. So if you've been sort of studying and jumping between section to section, I think that's okay. But I do think at some point in your prep, probably the sooner the better, if you can really take some real time out and focus on one section type and really drill in and figure out how to sort of master that section type, game type by game type, logical reasoning question type by question type. That's when you're really going to start seeing yourself get out of this plateau. For me, I got a 152. Then I maybe studied for a little while, and I plateaued at like the 158 to 160 range forever. And I was just stuck there. And it wasn't until I broke things down section type by section type, question type by question type, game type by game type, that I really started seeing a huge increase in my scores.
Yeah, that's right. The one thing you can't do, if you're approaching things all at once, great. But if you're not, the one thing you can't do is, like, say, spend a month on LR, then totally neglect it after that to focus on something else. You're always going to have to be doing some review of everything you learned previously. If you want to take the thinking out of this, like, we should mention that, we have schedules that have been used by now, thousands upon thousands of students that, have been incredibly effective at getting people's high scores. So if you're self-studying, especially, and you're only using books or whatever, we really encourage you to just hop on one of those schedules, because it takes the thinking and the worry out of it.
All right, Evan, I don't want to go too long here, so let's get back into the slides. Seeking understanding, not merely correct answers. To master a problem, great LR students don't just want to see one way to get to the right answer. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah. Here, maybe if we're in the interest of time, can we hop ahead to, we already talked about this distinction between deductive and inductive arguments a little bit, right? Maybe pick to the last end of this slide before how do I fix problem areas?
All right. Those who get good at the LSAT seek to emulate the thinking patterns
this is
of other
something
grade
that I
schools.
wanted to talk about. Yeah, you know, you don't have to invent the wheel here, guys. You know, like for me, for my part, back when I studied, the only thing I really had to focus in on was a handful of books. But even that, you know, like I was trying to really understand the way the people who wrote these books were thinking about the problems, you know. So we encourage you not to try and invent the wheel. Rely on resources that are out there. We especially would love it if you know, want to work with us, but rely on people that are out there. In, you know, our LR course, we have hundreds of question explanations that can help you kind of emulate the patterns of, you know, people who already really have a high level of understanding of these problems, right? But however, I do want to get a little nitpicky about this and say it quickly. We don't want people over relying on explanations, and whoever you end up working with, you know, and looking at an explanation should be always the last step in your analysis of a problem, you know. I think
so what should you do first before you run to you know, seek an explanation?
Yeah, if it's me and I do a problem and I have trouble with it, the first thing I do is dive back into the, you know, the course or the book that I'm working with for, you know, to see what it says about that that question type, or what it says about the features that are in that problem. Like if I see that the problem relates to causal reasoning, for example, I would maybe want to go back to whatever the resource I was using said about causal reasoning, right? If I felt that I remembered that adequately, then I might just want to sit with the problem a little bit, let it stew over, and give it another try, right? And just kind of keep reading it until I see clearly the reasoning that that question contains. Then if I still don't get it, I'm going to try to write out what I'm thinking about that problem, right? You know, and at that point, then once I've kind of gotten my thinking out about what makes this, you know, the answer I think is correct, and what makes the wrong answer is wrong, at that point, I would want to go and compare that to what the explanation says, you know. So, you know, working with even a single problem can be a long process. I would have times where I was spending, you know, many, you know, 20 minutes, maybe even half an hour total, just trying to like kind of work with one problem. And I wasn't just looking at the problem. I was going back to other places as well. But again, that's that will to master. Like,
yeah, you know, that's one thing I noticed about the students that seem to get the highest scores on this test is they're the students that aren't necessarily getting through the most questions. They're not necessarily doing the most prep tests. They're not necessarily the ones that are just crushing every single prep test day after day, just getting through a prep test every day, which I often do like to tell people to do as much, you know, as you can. But if you're neglecting this review, if you're neglecting this process of really diving into each question and really fully and thoroughly understanding why each question, especially the ones that you got wrong, why the incorrect answer that you selected is incorrect and why the correct answer is correct, and really spending time with these questions and reviewing thoroughly.
Yeah. In our mastermind group,
so important.
Yeah, in our mastermind group, we have, you know, a private forum where you can, you know, ask about any problem that you have trouble with. And the people who I find provide their own reasoning, and then I can work with them to show them how I would reason through that problem differently. You know, the people who do that most sometimes kind of tick me off by getting better scores than me eventually. So, you know, like really, guys, like whatever you do, be as engaged as possible with these problems, like that will to master, and the, you know, and the willingness to really engage with the reasoning of each problem, even if it takes all day, you know, is really what I think sets people apart that eventually go on to master this.
Yeah, and I will say the student who we had the first student beat my LSAT score recently, and you know, it makes me proud but a little bit jealous as well. And I will say the thing, she credited your LR lessons for really helping her improve LR. So you know, I thought that was a really great testament to your ability.
I mean, like I want to say this again. I said at the very beginning, I now understand these problems much better than I did when I took the LSAT. And I think, I can explain how to get to that level of understanding, after putting countless hours of work into making what I am absolutely positive is the best LR course out there. But you have to be ready to challenge yourself, right? Getting good, we already said it, but getting good at LR is challenging for everyone, no matter what, so be ready to work. Okay. Our LR course is going to be more work than other resources. It's, for one thing, it's simply longer. It's more challenging, takes deeper dives into concepts that than other courses. It covers concepts that other courses just don't talk about because I think they don't give students enough credit to have the ability to absorb that stuff. We have faith in your ability to do so. And as a final thought, I just don't want people to give up. Even if you've struggled with another resource, perhaps especially through if you have, this is a different approach, really trying to get you to think like the test makers, right? Rather than take shortcuts. And if you come and use that approach, even if you really, really struggled with something else, I'm positive you can get better at the LR section than you ever thought possible. I didn't think I would ever be good at that stuff when I started. And through hard work, I did get good. So if you're ready to challenge yourself, we can make big, big strides in your score.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, let me see if we have any. How many times have you officially taken the LSAT, Evan? I'm just going to go through
I
a
just
couple
took it
questions here.
once. I know a ton of people out there in the prep world are big into taking it over and over again, but I have a lot of other hobbies in my life that I vastly prefer to being in a cold test room on a Saturday morning. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe it could boost my cred, my street cred in the LSAT world if I was out there taking more. But this test, to be frank, isn't. I think the questions themselves are really fun, but going to take the test on a Saturday is not. So, one thing we're really aiming to do is make sure you only have to take it once as well. Josh also only took it once. So
yeah, back when we were studying the average scores, now they take your highest score. So back when we were prepping, they really average scores. So you really wanted to nail it in one test. Now, if somebody says that they wanted to study for 6 months, do you recommend taking an LR course at the beginning of your study?
Yeah, especially if you're on a 6-month course, I think LR is the thing where we most want it to percolate in your brain for as long as possible. Like given that I know that eventually I got better than I was when I took the test through just like teaching, having a longer time with the material, all things being equal, is often better, right? So yeah, and LR is the one that we really think the most time to percolate. I would totally recommend starting off with LR.
Especially since it's half your score, right? It's the most important thing. It's where you can add the most points on your LSAT score because it counts for half your test, half the test. So I think it's the most important one to kind of really get a start with. Now, Evan, can you talk a little about the logical reasoning course that you've been working on for a long time and you're launching tonight?
Yeah. So it really came through my understanding of. I think I always had a different approach than other resources out there because I had taken a logic course in college. So this course really tries to break down the elements of deductive reasoning to start with, and make sure that you can see the internal structure of any argument you face. So really, we don't start with the questions, right? Which may strike some people as a bit odd. You're not going to see an actual LSAT question for, like 15 or so lessons. You're going to be learning logic, right? And I think it's great to take the pressure off yourself to, be solving these questions. Because let's be honest, every time you face a question, it feels like a little challenge. There's some nerves there. And maybe your brain then isn't firing at full speed. We want you to really learn logic first, which luckily is something that probably everybody wants to learn, even if they don't go on to take the LSAT. So yeah, our course really focuses on teaching you logic and then applying that logic to the questions, right? And we work through it with every single concept. There's a video lesson for it, and then a text lesson that is not the same that, kind of reteaches you that topic so that you get two different looks at it. Because, I just find for me learning, I often had to hear the same thing from two different sources. So we try to sort of give you that experience within the course.
I haven't talked to you about this yet, but I was thinking about, I know the course is $99.99, which I think is already a great deal. I was thinking for the people, because we've got a lot of people who have stayed all the way through the end of this webinar. What if we give them half off tonight? Are you okay with that?
Just right now it's an introductory thing. I would really like to get people in there and,
Can we give them half off?
Yeah, let's do
half
it.
off? 50% off.
That's fine. Yeah.
All right.
Just for tonight.
50% off. Tonight only. Give me 1 second. I'm going to come up with a coupon code for you to enter to get that discount.
Yeah. So, guys, I've put countless hours into this course. I'm absolutely confident it's the best thing out there. So nothing in the world would make me happier than if you both take it and then you say, I want you to end up saying similar things to our student that beat Josh's score and relied on my lessons to do that. That's where I really want you to be. As an LSAT teacher for a long time now, I put a lot of pride in seeing students really succeed. So, please, if you've had trouble with LR working with somebody else, or just you really want to make sure that you can be someday very, very confident in your ability to do these problems, I would like it if you would work with me. So,
Evan, one of our viewers has asked, do you really think it's realistic for people to be able to make a 20-point jump? And if so, what does that demand?
Yeah, we see it all the time.
One moment. I'm going to just give everybody the coupon code, or the URL. If you would like to get half off the LR course, go to Lawschooli.com/LR2018. That's Lawschooli.com/LR2018. And
can you maybe get that up on the screen at some point? Because I always have trouble remembering.
Gotcha.
I always have trouble remembering anything that I hear. I have to see it. Yeah, that's why we also have text lessons, by the way, because, like for me personally, I have to read things to absorb them. So getting into that question about the 20 points, we see it all the time. It's never guaranteed, but if you really put in, if you're really willing to grind, it does happen. 20, especially a 20-point jump from, say, the low 150s to 170. Josh had a bigger jump than that, right?
No, yeah, so, I had a 25-point increase in my score. Yeah. So it really is possible. Now, is everybody going to get a 25-point increase in their score? I don't think so. No, it's not necessarily going to happen, but I do think it's possible. I think anybody who really, really works at this stuff and takes the time. If you've got 3 months or more to study for this test, and if you really commit yourself to it, I think 25 or a 20-point jump is certainly possible. I know I can say that for a fact because I did it myself. And I just put up Lawschooli.com/LR2018 on the slide here. That'll get you 50% off. That'll take you right to the checkout for the logical reasoning course. If you wanted to, but it's good for anything on the site. So that it'll put a coupon in your cart. If you want to go back and add the mastermind group to your cart, you can join the mastermind group. And by the way, if you join the mastermind group, you don't need to buy the LR course separately. That'll be included.
Just a quick, there's probably a few people here who don't know what the mastermind group is. That gives you access to all of our course material, like including logic games and reading comprehension stuff. a ton of explanations. Every week we have a small group chat session. We call it office hours, where it's just like this, Josh and me talking to you, but there's usually
There
just
are hundreds of people here, so we can actually answer every question.
Yeah. And then we do prep test reviews on Mondays where, we go over a prep test together. And then you have private forums where I'll just answer any question that you have. Right. So, if you weren't familiar with the mastermind group, that's got a lot of additional features on top of the LR. Josh, if anyone does get LR, the LR course, and then later wants to upgrade, what would we do there?
We can give you $50
Yeah,
off.
I mean, just make sure if you do that to email support@Lawschooli.com. We have that support link up somewhere, and we'll get that taken care of for you. Let's see here. Did we have any other questions, staff?
We've got a ton. I mean, hundreds of questions. This course helps with logic games as well? No. I mean,
yeah. So if you want to, yeah. I mean, it'll explain logic to you in a way that will, make you better when you then relearn some of those same logic concepts for logic games. But right now, our logic games course, we haven't yet built it out as a standalone course. So it's still just in the mastermind group course area.
Yeah, so if you want logic game stuff, you're going to have to, until we're going to release the logic games course as a standalone course at some point, we're going to do that. But right now, if you want the logic game stuff, you've got to join the full mastermind group. Will we be able to complete the course in time to take the June LSAT, Evan?
Oh yeah. It's designed to, if you look on the page there, when you link through to it, it's about a 35-day study plan. I think to get through it in just that 35 days, you are going to have to kind of keep your head down to the grindstone, but 2 months, no problem.
Okay. Do you have to bring your own prep tests?
Yes. The way that we could provide this as cheaply as we do, the licensing fees that LSAT charges to people who make courses are really heavy. So you're probably going to notice.
Here's a big secret in the industry. If you're paying for a LSAT prep company for prep test questions, for real LSAT questions, that's a huge markup that they're passing on to you. And they're paying more for the questions than you can buy them on Amazon. So if we were to license 20 or 10 prep test questions worth of 10 prep tests worth of questions, we would pay roughly between $40 to $60, depending on which prep test we license. You can get the same 10 prep tests on Amazon for $20. So we'd have to pay $40 to $60, and then we'd have to mark it up a little bit for the trouble. That's usually what these prep courses do. We don't do that because we want you to get the most bang for your buck. So we say, hey, go to Amazon, get these 10 courses.
We need to have the book open with you. And, I don't feel bad about it because unfortunately, like if you want to prep effectively for the LSAT, you're probably going to have to just buy every prep question anyways. So buy all of those prep test compilations. So, like this kind of avoids you having to buy things twice.
So
right?
any recommended outside material other than the prep test that you need?
Josh and I have made no secret of it over the years that we're big fans of the Power Score Bibles. That's what he and I both use. I like to think that I've made something better here, but sometimes it does help to, like I mentioned earlier, sometimes it does help to hear, information from a few sources, right?
Yeah.
So even though I'm absolutely certain that my material is more comprehensive, if you maybe feel that you're somebody who really benefits from hearing it twice, I'm never going to, discourage somebody from doing that.
So you don't
You know,
you don't need the PowerScore LR books to benefit from the course, but if you're going to add another resource on top of that, the PowerScore
yeah.
book is probably the one to get.
Josh and I are the only people out there
I
who
know
would
that
ever
actually
say,
recommend.
yeah, this, the people in the LSAT industry are kind of weird. And like, like, I don't care if you go use something else. I think my stuff is better, and that eventually you'll come to realize that. But a lot of people use a lot of real resources, and that's okay.
And we do not, PowerScore does not pay us any money, although they should, because we've helped
Yeah.
them out a lot during the years. But
And-
we have absolutely no affiliation with PowerScore other than, go ahead.
Evan and
Steph.
Josh, one of the questions
Yes.
that has come in is, can they buy the course now, and how long is it good for?
Oh yeah,
Good
I
forever.
should have answered that beforehand. Like, we know that life gets in the way of LSAT prep. That's another thing that I think is kind of bullshit in this industry, is the 3-month access things that you see. Like, like, I know that, if you buy something and then maybe your job starts to get hairy and you can't focus on the LSAT, I want you to be able to use it again afterwards. As somebody who lost $1,000 to a bar prep review company because of that stupid 3-month thing, I never want you to go through that. So yeah, it's lifetime access. Everything that we sell is lifetime access.
How long is and that's the life of our website. If we
Yeah, as long as Josh and
as
I are
long as
alive.
we're around, yeah, as long as
As
we're
long-
around.
And we stay in separate places so that there's less of a risk of
Our
yeah.
lifetime, not yours.
Yeah.
Although, like, if anything that's recorded, it should be up for forever. But
Yeah.
I want to have that caveat. Just that's the lawyer in me wanting to.
Yeah.
How long is that coupon good for? Evan, I'll let you decide that, since I'm the one who just decided to throw a coupon at you. How long is it good for? Tonight only?
Yeah, maybe give them till like noon tomorrow. Is that possible? Or yeah,
we could do tomorrow, but we'll do, since it is so late tonight. We can go to noon tomorrow. So you've got till noon tomorrow before that coupon code is.
So sleep on it if you need to, but yeah. And we we're gonna pop it up to full price.
And another question is, how many days is the course, or how long should it take someone to complete the course?
Yeah, like about 35 days, thereabouts. It's okay to take longer. If you were working with one of our schedules, it would take longer than 35 days before you finish it, because we'll have you working on some LG too. But yeah, if you were just working with this, about 35 days.
What is the cost after the discount?
So yeah, we started with.
So it's $50. $50.
Yeah.
What if they've already read the Bible, but they still need to improve their score? Is this going to be good for them? Or
yeah, I think so. For one thing, there's just hundreds of question explanations that will that drop as you go along. So that's something that the Bible doesn't have. So yeah, I do want to mention that the Bible costs about $50-$60 now. So I if I were them, I would maybe mark that down. But I'm definitely certain that even if you've worked with the Bible, there's going to be some things that I talk about that the Bible hasn't. We've had a ton of students who have come over from working with the Bibles and still really benefited. So,
and is this is it just the introduction to the course that you get for $50 tonight, or is the whole course? Does the course just kind of introduce you to LR, or is it a full-fledged LR course?
Yeah, it's full-fledged. I mean, we cover every single topic that you could think of. There will never be an LR problem that you can't explain after you're done with the course.
And to reiterate, this course, you have lifetime access.
Yes, correct? Lifetime access.
And how many hours a day? If it's about 35 days, how many hours a day worth of work?
I think that it's going to depend on the person. I haven't personally kind of tried it out because I wrote so much of it that it wouldn't be objective if I went through. So we're not quite sure exactly, but I would think like 1 to 2 hours a day, you know, for most weekdays would be adequate on average. Maybe even, you know, considerably less than that. Now that I think about it, I mean, you could probably think about like devoting an hour or so a day to this. You know,
there seem to be a good contingent of international students here. Is the LR course something that you would recommend for LR or international students, or do you think you would recommend more the mastermind group? Or
we do find that international students, I think, maybe benefit a lot from having somebody personally be there to explain. You know, in the event that English is a second language. You know, and I'll just say I'm a student of language myself, so I know how hard it can be sometimes. You know, so like the mastermind group, I think, is really, really great for, you know, always having that resource there to actually like ask me a specific question. But, you know, yeah, the LR course, I think, you know, is still something you could benefit from if you just want to get your feet wet and learn LR.
If did I hear correctly that if I pay for the mastermind group, the LR course is included?
Yes, it is included. Yeah. So you know,
and the mastermind group has the LR course. Just want to make sure. Again, these are all different questions. Yes. You join the mastermind group, you get.
Yeah, we just launched this course, so you need to give me just a few hours to add it in to the you know, a new area in the mastermind group, but it'll be in the mastermind group by midnight. So yeah.
And the mastermind group currently does have an LR course as well.
So, yeah. It's already
this
in there.
Course is actually this new course is a reworking, you know, basically a new edition of the one that's currently in the mastermind group. Yeah, but they're going to be available in both places.
Okay, we've got a couple people with like financial issues. They're waiting for financial aid to come through. Is there any way we could extend this deal to them since they're still here?
Can we take an email or something like that?
Yeah, I've already taken care of that, Josh.
Okay, cool. All right. Okay. We've got tons and tons of questions. But I think we've hit most of the main points. Steph, do you see any that we didn't hit on?
Nope. And I can stay after to kind of do like a type of after office hours to answer any of the remaining questions.
Yeah, Steph normally kind of after our office hours within the mastermind group sticks around for kind of more personal session where, you know, people can just talk and stuff. So maybe if we, you know.
When does the LR course start?
Whenever you want to start it, but yeah,
can I buy it tonight and then wait and take it in a month?
Yes, absolutely fine. Again, you could wait 20. I want to live for, you know, forever ideally. So yeah, you could take it in 10 years. It'll still be there. It'll be a different edition. You know, I plan to update it, but yeah, it's fine.
So with the mastermind group, you get, what else do you get? You get the LR course, but you also get
the LG course. The RC course is sort of in progress. So, you know, that's not a feature that I really want to trumpet a lot right now, but you know, I'm building that. There's tons of question explanations, you know, video explanations of logic games, a private forum where you can ask us questions and talk with other group members, you know, which is, you know, unlike TLS or something where everybody sees what you do and nobody's answering your question. You know, there's, you know, the office hours, which is kind of a session very similar to this, where we just, you know, answer any question you have. And then there is prep test reviews, which we go over a prep test together live. So those prep test reviews, I should mention, you know, only occur in the 2 months leading up to each exam. But yeah, that's another good feature.
All right. Well,
Josh, there is one question for you. A person just purchased the course and it says that it's currently processing. Is that normal?
I will take a look at that. And
yeah, we're going to be, since it's new, if there's any issues, you know, we're going to be like like staying on top of that. So.
Yeah, I'll make sure it's all good.
Yeah, it should take probably about 20 minutes for an account to process and get connected. But Josh and Evan will stay on top of that.
Yep, I'll make sure that that everything's good to go. All right.
Yeah, somebody saying, you know, I have all LSAT books here. I'm not really following.
They're basically asking where the questions come from to drill, and I was explaining it to them that it comes out of the first group, the 7 through 38.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I bring you through real questions. You know, there's some quiz material. There's a lot of quiz material where I've made up my own like kind of questions that test just a specific little area, but then, you know, we reinforce everything with having you do relevant real questions. So
All right. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, everybody. This was a great session tonight. Thanks for everybody for showing up. I'm looking forward to seeing more of you inside the mastermind group, in office hours, on the forums, or, you know, just hang out in the LR course. Really looking forward to seeing everybody improve. I'm excited for this cycle. You know, one thing we didn't mention earlier is that there's a June-July test this year. So there's a July test in addition to the June test. So I think this is a really great opportunity for everybody to take that June test and have that backup July test just in case everything doesn't go as planned. So I definitely strongly encourage everybody to take that June, or to aim for that June test with you know, having that July as a backup plan, just in case you know, something happens on test day and you don't quite get the score you want, or, you know, if you decide to postpone until July because you're just not ready, you haven't been able to prep as much as you would have liked. I love that they added this July test, so you've got the sort of back-to-back test dates that are really close together here in the summer, and you can get that LSAT score, get ready for applications process before applications open, and then you can kind of get your apps in early in the process when you have the best shot at at getting into a better school and getting scholarship money and everything. Just with the rolling admissions process, you know, especially if more people continue to come back to law school. We've seen a bump in admissions this year, and if that continues, you know, things might start getting a little more competitive. So once again, getting your apps in early in the process is always better than getting them in later. So get ready for that June LSAT so you can retake in July if necessary, and still have your LSAT score in hand when apps start to open up. So thanks again, everyone. Thanks for coming tonight. Really enjoyed this. We should probably do these more often because they're so much fun, and looking forward to seeing you guys on the inside in the mastermind group or in the course. Good night, everyone.
Thanks a lot, guys. Good night. Study hard, and we'll talk soon. Okay.
Steph, do you want to hang around and take questions?
I'll stop recording, and then I will hang around and answer any of the other questions that are left. And depending on the amount of people that stay, I will unmute people or just continue to answer the questions here.
All right, great. Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you so much, Stephanie. And thank you, Evan. Have a great night.